Hello and welcome to Small Game Adventures. I am Mootle, and this is part 1 of our 9-part speedrun how-to video. So each chapter, some of these videos will be really short because the chapters are really short when you do the speedrun. Some of them are a bit longer because they're more involved. This episode will just be covering setup and chapter 1. So setup's pretty easy. I'm using the Wuxia robe. Just because it makes you more vulnerable to all elements. We're using a lot of water and shield throwing spells to catapult us across the map. So this is a fast road that makes you more vulnerable to things. It is harder to play with, but if you're doing speed running, I'd recommend that you've already played the game a lot, so you should feel comfortable operating in normal mode with a robe that gives you more damage. Skins doesn't matter, black just looks cool. The Founder's Staff is really important to this. Massive bonus for water and shield spells. Now shield is what we're using for offensive spells, that's going to make us be able to kill things faster, and the water is what we use to propel ourselves, so we need that to get through the maps faster. Weapons, again, doesn't matter unless you like using a weapon when you're fighting. I find it too slow. So, without any further ado, we're going to create a game. You can do the speedrun in any, we skip prologue because it's a tutorial. They call it a prologue, but it's a tutorial. We don't need to do that for a speedrun. You can do this in any difficulty setting you want. Obviously, normal is recommended. But if you want to do a speedrun in bananas, that's completely up to you. It's still any percent, so it's not going to give you any extra kudos to do it in bananas. Unfortunately, there are different categories. Now, the first level is a lot of skips, really, and it's a really fast set. So first of all, we're not actually skipping anything per se, we're just trying to get to this area here, which is fun. There is a skip here. If we go to the edge of the grass and jump overwards, there's a section here that we're trying to skip over. Going into this section will trigger this cutscene. Right? We don't want to trigger that cutscene because it takes time. Now, from this cutscene, we don't actually have to kill these guys to continue to the next area if we don't want to. You can just launch straight if you're feeling confident with the launch. You can just launch anyway, so if you hit that cutscene, it's not the end of the world. You can still do the same launch as we're about to do. Now, all of the launching that we're doing, if we're out of bounds, we just use 4 waters and a rock, and just step forward slightly just before it lands on you, essentially. That's how you get launched forward. For a large throw, like the one we're about to do here, we're going to use a water life shield, double water mindset down, and then our 4 waters and a rock. And again, we drop it and we walk forward just before it hits, and that's going to throw us forwards there. That jump there is quite easy to do. If you aim too far to the left, you're going to hit an invisible wall on the section in the middle. In which case you can just run around and jump through. Doesn't matter if you spawn the enemies, you can just jump to the skip point. There's nothing stopping you from skipping that section. A lot of these you don't need to do the trigger point skips, but it does make your life easier. So again, this is a trigger point here. I'm not going to highlight them because it's going to be a pain to do that. There's a trigger point here that will summon all the enemies in this next area. If we stand on top of these white flowers here and teleport over, we skip the trigger, right? So there's nothing spawning in here. We don't want to go in there though. We want to boundary skip. So anywhere behind this tree, this is a really forgiving one. We're just going to teleport through the fence, and we're now out of bounds. Now, if you go too far out of bounds, the game will kill you after a certain amount of time. We're going to go up to this corner up here. Again, just the 4 waters and a rock, and we're kind of going parallel with the road over here. Just trying to jump up this way. You should be able to see yourself up in the top left-hand corner here. Again, we're skipping all the trigger points. All the trigger points exist within the bounds. Same thing, kind of parallel to the road up here. And our final one, we're going 3, and we want to kind of end up going this direction. We're trying to hit the trigger point exactly. Just for argument's sake, I'm going to not hit the trigger point. I'm going to go up too far, up here. Where am I? Okay, so notice how I'm just walking around. I've got manual control. The trigger point that ends the level is kind of in this general area here. If you go too far, it's not going to trip, right? So if you go too far up, you're going to have to walk backwards. Ideally, you want to try and land your jump here. If you land your jump over here, it's going to trigger the end of that scene. So if you find yourself beyond that scene and walking around, then you've gone too far. So you need to step backwards a bit. But pretty easy. So 3 jumps, pop, 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 and that's the end of that scene. And this is pretty much the end of the level. So again, we've got a mini boss fight that comes up here. We have to fight Robin Hood, or whatever his name is. The trigger for that is kind of this grass section here. The way to remember it is that if you stand about a centimeter away from the end, if I walk any further here, I'm going to trigger it, but if I jump there, I'm going to land up here, and I've skipped the Robin Hood thing, right? So again, I'm going to just show you how to not do it. This is the boss scene that we don't want to fight, right? So I'm going to kill myself. I would recommend, if you're doing a speed run, as with any kind of speed run, if you get to this point and you trigger this battle, just restart. It's the first level, it doesn't matter. Restart your run, because something like that is really avoidable. The best way to do it is to speed up. Oop, missed it again. I'm going to try and get this. You want to haste up, and you want to get the timing on that teleport to get you to jump. If you're struggling with getting the teleport with haste on, then don't bother so much. Oh, come on! I'm gonna get this just on principle. Otherwise, that's level 1. It's literally that simple. I'm gonna go through each level individually. I was thinking of combining a couple, but no, I'm gonna do each one individually. And once we've skipped this, we can just water blast to the end. The trigger point's just beyond the bridge. If you trigger the fight, it deletes the end of scene trigger point until the fight is complete, and then you can go to the end. Some fights are different, so I'm not sure how Magicka 2 was created, because in some scenes you can not kill everything and just jump to the end, and in some battles, triggering the enemies will delete the endpoint until you've killed all the enemies, and the endpoint will respawn, like in this set. And then there are some where the endpoint doesn't exist until you trigger the enemies, and then you have to kill the enemies and then finish. So there are a couple that are a bit iffy, especially in Chapter 3. There's actually a new skip that I've just discovered in Chapter 3, which is pretty exciting. But those are the 3 steps. So this one's pretty simple. Practice with your blasts. Practice those trigger points. None of the trigger points are 100% detrimental, so you can still trip the first 2 and not really lose much time. The last one will lose you a lot of time if you trigger to try to go. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for episode